All right, we are back. We are here today with a guitar player, writer, and musician here in Kansas City, Brock Alexander. How you doing?
Doing excellent. Good to see you.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
So I think I met you through watching your band. Obviously, the old Number Fives have been a long time buddy of Derek Tucker from Wichita, and I knew that you guys were playing together, and was definitely impressed by your playing. And I think I also met you guys for the first time probably at your Freddie T's jam you had back here a couple years ago.
But, nostalgic at this point.
Yeah, right. That was a bit ago now. But definitely, I've always been impressed by. Obviously, you're just shredding the crap out of your guitar. Is always fun to watch.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Words.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about because I don't really know a whole lot about you. How'd you kind of get started playing or whatever?
I mean, my mother was a piano player since a very young age, and grew up wanting to be a concert pianist in school. Mm-hmm. And my dad was the bass player in the band, much like my grandpa. His dad was a bass player in a band, and so that's how my parents met. And I was born in '85, so since then, my mom was a music teacher, elementary music teacher, and I just kind of grew up going to her classroom, which was filled with just random instruments, like basically child kind of toy instruments, but instruments more or less, and like bells and
recorder, all that.
Yeah, there was all wacky like Weeros and stuff, like percussion instruments. We did stuff where like bounce basketballs and just try to bounce it to the beat, which is an interesting concept because as a kid, I really enjoyed sports as well. So it was like, oh, this is both. That seems fun.
Yeah.
But just, piano was always around. My mom taught piano lessons, and it was just something that my family kind of had around and did. And then as I got older, they forced me into piano lessons as a young kid. Just, and looking back at it now, I'm really grateful for it. I only took like maybe 2 years, but I still try to relate a lot of stuff on the guitar back to piano and see how well I can adapt back to that early thing for me. And so I took piano and kind of hated it and finally got out of that. My parents let me skip that, and but it wasn't far after that it was time for school band. And I got started early. My parents were like, hey, you're going to have braces. So we're going to let you play the drums. I don't know why they let me play the drums. But so I was taking, like snare drum lessons in like 3rd or 4th grade. And again, so it wasn't necessarily like anything different for me, but it was just like I was always set up to kind of excel.
Yeah.
Via music, because that's what my mom did. And my parents, they were all about it, And I had an older sister who was kind of doing the same thing. We were both in like a choir. Wichita, John Levitt, Master Arts Youth Chorale. So I sang in that choir from probably like 4th grade to like maybe 6th grade.
Yeah.
And again, at the same time, while I was doing it, it was kind of fun, but it was kind of like I had to do it.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of friends that were kind of doing it as well in that choir. So that made it fun, like a social aspect.
Yeah.
But he's probably the reason, not probably, he is the reason that I consider myself a decent singer to this point, is because I was getting, A+ vocal training when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I didn't know it at the time, but it's just setting you up for the future, So as I'm kind of going along in school and life and everything, I think I got to be in like 7th or 8th grade, and my parents, I was in percussion at that point through the school, and then through a select like orchestra, Friends University. I did a thing there that was basically like a wind ensemble. So instead of just playing snare drum or like, drum set or something, it was like playing timpani or, mallets, marimba, bells, xylophone, all of the above. And so I was doing that, and again, like enjoying it, but kind of getting tired of being forced to do it. So, not to have a broken record, but I did a lot of different things, kind of, not because I was forced, but it's just kind of the path that was set up for me, amongst other things. And by the time I got 7th or 8th grade, in addition to that other stuff that I was already doing through school, I found my mom's acoustic guitar in the basement closet. And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to put this in my room next to my drum set because it looks cooler. And so I did that. And after a while, I kind of was like, well, I better, like I had some buddies who quote unquote played guitar, and, you know, a couple of them were taking lessons and actually knew what to do. And so I kind of gleaned onto them, and I was like, okay, I want to do this too, you know? And I think after years of thinking that I wanted to be Ringo Starr, I kind of was like, I kind of want to be out front. Like I want to sing and maybe play guitar. Like I saw some of my friends do it, and not that I was jealous, but it just was a nice like, hey, they're doing it. Like I could do that. And then so
you wanted more attention or something?
No, I just
I'm
you know, I wanted to do that, and and even to the point of that's when I, you know, kind of discovered guitar players when I was 8th grade, freshman in high school, which is a weird time for anyone, right? And so as I'm growing up, I'm like have all this music background, but what really kind of got me was finally sitting in my bedroom and like trying to learn guitar by myself, because I had come from all of this like private lessons and school lessons and all this junk that I kind of wanted to learn on my own. And that's how I discovered a lot of like my influences, I would say, musically, is just like guitar players that I admired at the time, like Eric Clapton or like Stevie Ray Vaughan. I wasn't even really keen to yet, but like maybe Jimi Hendrix. And again, Jimi Hendrix was a lot of, I saw maybe some of my friends' older brothers that were like, oh, Jimi Hendrix, and I just was like, okay, you gotta like Hendrix if you're right, if you're cool, you know. And so it might have taken me a year or so to get into that, but at that point, it was fun for me. I enjoyed like nerding out and like going backwards and finding who were their influences. And then like, I remember even in college, I would go to the library, the music library at KU, and even though I wasn't in the music program, I would just check out CDs, just because you could just like, you know, like a library book, you could just like rent CDs or whatever it's called. And I would go home and put them on my computer and then like take them back to the library and be like, yeah, I'm just here to check out stuff for class. And I don't think I was breaking any laws, but I always remember that being very advantageous. Just
that's cool.
Resource like that. But so as all that stuff's happening, you know, I wanted to be a guitar player and I wanted to sing, and I kind of just got into it in that way, and the bug bit me hard, you know. And I think moving through high school, I still, you know, was pretty active in sports and stuff like that, and I actually did well in school. I don't know why, but, you know, I tried hard and did good, you know. Kid did good.
Yeah.
And so moving into college, it was even like I knew I wanted to make music somehow a part of my life. I just didn't know how much of it or how much would be like my formative years where it was more academic, and how much it would be like, you know, I can do this on my own, and it might not be this grand scheme of things like what I thought it would be, but it's still kind of, you know, like you're doing what you want musically, and if you're lucky enough, you can kind of turn it into not something that's fun, but just, you know, kind of makes you revenue, and then maybe even becomes like a business for you, a small business or something like that. So it's morphed and grown since I started, I guess, picking up my mom's acoustic guitar, wanting to just look cooler, and be able to play something. And I spent a lot of time with the guitar between then and now, and learned a lot of things, even giving lessons and taking a few different lessons throughout the years. So you're always learning with that stuff. But that would be my very, very long,
sure, man, that's cool.
Story.
Well, you said a couple things that was interesting there. The one that I've seen as a theme is the 34th we've done, but especially when I've talked to people like Nick Schneblin and whatever, and every one of them talks about we had music in the home, you know, we or a lineage of at least 3 generations here in a row of musicians, and having that in the home, or just being around it, and then look what's happened 20 years later is now. And so I've seen that as a theme. I was the same way. My mom had a family band with my grandpa and et cetera, you know. So the other thing that you said that was really funny is that I know we deal with this as a teacher all the time, is you say that word forced. And that always cracks me up as a kid, because like I've said a bunch of times, like this happens to me literally every gig, is that I'll go and somebody will come up to me, oh, I love the violin. In 4th grade, I played, and then I can just finish their sentence, and then I quit, right? Like, and everybody has this feeling that I was forced, and that annoyance as a kid, and you feel the forced. But then you also said something really interesting that later, all of a sudden, you get it. You get why they did that, what the benefits are, et cetera, and like, what. Can you expound on that a little bit of the forced part?
I think it's just weird because, like, I think when you're a kid, there has to be, like, a means to an end, or it seems like there does. But as you're older, it's kind of like, to be good is good enough. Like, just to be good at something in your own bedroom, like, to say that, like, I sat here and played the piano and learned and kind of taught myself how to do something, or use resources around you to learn. Just that amount of satisfaction is sometimes all you need. To play an instrument and stuff like that. And so as a kid, like, you're thinking, like, what's the payoff for this? Like, what's the deal? And as a side note, I know this is awful. It has nothing to do with music, but I remember it was also a lady who, like, lived out in the country, and she had these huge dogs. They were like farm dogs. And they would always jump on me as I was getting out of the car to go to piano lessons. And so I think even something as dumb as that, it was this small little, like, fear in my head where I was a young kid, and I was like, the dogs are going to jump all over me, and I just don't like going. Like, my dad had to, like, walk me up to the front door. It's like, funny. It's okay. Right. You're going to be fine. I was like...
See, that's hilarious that you said that, because that happens a lot when we think it's this thing that we hate, but it's really this other thing, and we don't even really, like, put it all together. We can't even verbalize why we don't, That's so funny, because I know as teachers we deal with that all the time, is trying to figure out that, even talking about, like, the non-musical benefits of music, of learning hard work and all that kind of stuff, not making excuses, and we know that later on this is going to be a good thing, linking up your two hemispheres. There's like a million things that are good about it, but it's hard to just have that shotgun, well, no, you're going to do this, and then even if you don't like it, and later you're going to love this, but...
And it's even kind of sad, though, too, because I think there's a level of people think they're not good enough to do it. And so the idea of, like, being creative kind of dwindles, in our society as you get older. And it just sucks because there's a lot of people that would have a lot of fun just, like, like playing the drums or doing something musical, even for a short amount of time. But I think, like you're saying, people they take lessons, and then they get to a level where they think they're not good enough, or they see other people, or see something that's, like, in their world, they're like, man, I'm never going to be that good. Like, why even bother? Like, this is hard. It takes time and energy. That's what kind of sucks even for younger generations, I know that video games weren't really a big thing for me. Like, I was doing something else, and a lot of the time that's the same thing, where it's just like, I spend hours, I feel lucky if I get to spend hours playing guitar. Most times nowadays, I'm like, man, I'm lucky if I get time to do that. Whereas then I would just waste time playing guitar or something. And I think, not that was good or bad, but that's just how I passed time. And so other people, they get to a certain level, and that's maybe not how they enjoy passing the time.
Right.
And then it also is this, like, complex where they're inferior, and they're like, if I can't do that, then I have no business doing it. Whereas, other cultures, it's, like, much more of a communal thing, like music. Like, hey, if you can clap and stomp your feet, like, you're join in. And it can be that more of an experience like that, where sometimes we like to keep this barrier between, like, performer and audience member.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And that's kind of weird, too, because it doesn't take much training to find a beat or know where a beat would fall within our Western music, And I think even that, people would get more enjoyable experiences.
You're talking about the jealousy factor.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if it would be jealousy, but just like
musician to musician, that is just a thing. And I know in sports that's it's 100% a thing. You're just like,
maybe
Michael Jordan, what do you do about this dude? It's
describing it as like competition, though. Like, and sometimes that's a deal too, where, like, you don't want it to be this competition. Because, like, if you're, again, the reward is a skill, and it makes other people not only, it makes yourself happy, but if you're lucky enough, it can make other people happy as well and have a good time, or, be healed and all that other stuff. But, like, sometimes just the the idea of creating the music is just as enjoyable, you know.
It's not naturally a competition, is it?
Yeah. I mean,
sports is,
and it
the
can
whole
help.
point is a game.
I mean,
you know,
I guess
like,
there's obviously healthy competition pushes you to be better, you know.
it could.
Like if John Lennon came in with a great song, Paul McCartney would go in and try to write a better song, you know, or something along those lines. But that doesn't always happen, obviously.
But they had a natural respect underlying that. It wasn't that happens a lot. I know it's really hard to not feel, especially like when you get in a town like Kansas City where everybody can just feel the hierarchy kind of a thing going on, right? You know, those are the good players, and and then these guys are the jammers, and then you have that, you know, and you start like ranking and doing all this crap, you know.
I mean, I would say that there's
some people do that.
There's levels of that in any city or anywhere you go though too, and it's not necessarily like that, but it's also. If it's anywhere like that, then that just happens to be a scene. Because there's enough people to not like put people in places like that at all, but just like you have enough people that are there interested in it. So, I mean, if there's ever anything like that happening, that would probably be a success. You know?
I mean, it's like hard to stay out of that mentality. That's
what
I mean.
You know,
it's hard.
Yeah.
It can be done, but it's hard.
Yeah, you just gotta keep doing your thing, because that's what it's all about anyway.
Yeah. So tell me. So now we've kind of gotten up till today. So talk about old number fives a little bit.
So it's been probably 6 years since we've started as a band. 2 original records, which were basically done in house and at our own expense, if you will. And then since then we've probably played, I don't know, over 500 shows. Yeah, probably more than that. But, you know, a large number of shows. And played a lot of material and been lucky enough to travel some and experience some of what that's like, I guess, out on the road as a successful band. Not to the extent of a lot of people, their success, but, you know, it's some small version of the success that you thought of when you were a kid or thought of when you wanted to get into it to begin with. And so at this point, I think there's actually been, for the first time, some turnover in the band. And so we're trying to think about ways to maybe expand what we've done for a long time and thinking about, maybe ways to add additional members and just kind of not change the sound or necessarily stylings of what type of music we play, but just see what happens with a beefier sound or you know, additional musical voices, not like literal like singing voices, but like someone's like adding additional voices to.
Because you guys have had a trio for forever,
it's
right?
been just guitar, bass, drums for, like I said, at least 6 years now. I guess the band started in like the very, very beginnings of 2012. So yeah, 6 years.
That's cool, man. And I know, listen to you guys. I've only heard when Aaron was there, you know, but yeah, I'm always a fan of, you know, Derek's an absolute great choice for your band. You know, he's a really good bass player, and you shred the crap out of all your solos, and you're a good singer, and you know, and he gave some good drummers, and I'm sure anybody else that you guys would be interested in bringing in is gonna do what you need. You know, I'm sure that.
I mean, shout out to those guys. Obviously, they're great players, and they're 2/3 of the band. So Aaron Thomas, who has at this point, you know, we've kind of parted ways, and it was very much just, I think, it was a long relationship, and we basically done a lot of things together, and it just, but at the end of the day, sometimes it gets tough to, you know, get back on the horse again and want to do things together and be on the same page with stuff. And, you know, life happens. Lots of life happens over the course of 6 years. And I've even known Aaron before that. Previously, I lived in Lawrence when I went to school in KU, and we played in a band for about 2 years before I moved away for about 4 years.
Yeah.
So
that's now we've known,
8, yeah. So I mean, we've been good friends for a very long time. We've been bandmates for a very long time. We've been like co-business owners for a very long time. So, not to say that the relationship has run its course, but it had just got to a point where we were both kind of on the same page and, you know, looking for a change in some way. So
well, Aerosmith doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Those guys have been together for like 40 years. That's ridiculous. You know, I mean, that just, you know, it just is what it is. You know?
Yeah, and honestly, we've been very lucky. So Derek Tucker was not actually the original bass player either, you know. So we started out with a guy, Pat Adams, who was actually a drummer and is a drummer, a very accomplished drummer. He was our bass player when that band started, and then Patricio Lazen was our bass player for about 2 years. And so the band has, you know, kind of changed and grown and evolved, but always kind of been the same type of band, you know. And so at this point, moving forward, we've got some different guys that are kind of, you know, making stuff happen. And Adam Watson would be the most,
I like
I'd
Adam
say
a lot, yeah.
at this point, he's probably been the most consistent, and I would say he's in the band. You know what I mean? So, and we're just basically, like I said, trying to see what the next steps are, and we've done quite a few shows now already with Adam. So
that's cool. I like his playing a lot.
Yeah, and
He's
so it's
very
been a
accomplished,
good change, and it's been fun just to kind of be on your toes again. Sometimes playing with somebody for a very, very long time, you get you don't have to think about as many things because the changes are instinctual.
Yeah.
Versus, man, I'm not really sure how we're gonna hit the ending here, you know. And so, like in that sense, I think
it can be rejuvenating though too.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of like the best. To me, it seems like I say this analogy all the time, but music is very much like surfing or like skiing or something like that, where the physical act of what you're doing, either it's surfing or you know playing guitar and singing, mechanically or whatnot, is always the same, but the conditions are always different. So everything you're doing is the same, but it's always based on the circumstances and, you know, the mood you're in, the mood the band's in, how things are going in their lives, or how the weather is, you know, if it's cold, the room, the environment, the sound system.
That's interesting. I
sound
like that.
guy. You're still running through those songs, and in that regard, like, even bands that, for the most part, play the same set lists every night, which, you know, we don't really do. We play a lot of the same songs, but they're never in the same order and stuff. Even something like that, though, you know, you're still getting a different performance and a different angle or perspective on that original song or that tune, even a cover tune.
See that, and that's another thing that's interesting. I think that the band that comes to mind with that type of idea is Fish. You know, I mean, Fish. Every single show is a different deal, and they just like that. They don't ever do the same show twice. First of all, they're like improvising the entire freaking thing, but they're moving their set list around, and they're kind of jamming out this song, but then not this one this night. And like, that's really cool. I know a lot of people have some very different opinions about that subject, about show to show to show. You know, how are we gonna? Do we want to give them? We are an act and a show, and it's like a 6 nights Vegas kind of a thing where you're gonna come see this act. We give you the same jokes, we give you the same, you know, and then you go see Fish, and it's like totally different, and you know. Yeah,
well, I mean, I think it's just, you know, there's not. Sad to say, there's not really ever gonna be like I mean, maybe I could be mistaken, but it's tough for somebody to say that like another Beatles is going to come along where they're just going to have so much of the music market. You know what I mean? So much popularity that they're taking up most of the pie. Nowadays, like, you're lucky if you have a little sliver of any sort of success, you know, even really successful artists. Like, it's not to the extent that, like, an artist like the Beatles or Elvis had. And so I think even to have that small amount of success, you know, that's the fine line between your audience and your fans, I guess, is it's like, are you trying to maybe please yourself and in that sense be a little bit more for a diehard fan? Or are you trying to maybe please diehard fans but maybe creep into the, I wouldn't say radio-friendly idea, but you're maybe a little bit more tighter package in your songwriting?
Right.
It's more like, okay, here's 3 minutes of a song, rather than like, okay, here's like a 17-minute song that, like, if you're into this, you're going to love it. But if you're not, you're going to leave before that 17 minutes is over. So that's the fine line between, are you, you know, and I think I really enjoy both of those things. I enjoy really short, just to the point pop songs just as much as I enjoy, you know, like listening to something be like jammed out for 10 minutes, you know? And then even to the point, I can't listen to everything. I'm just as human as anybody else. Like, after a while, for some things and music, you know, ideas, I'm just like, man, I'm burned out on that already. Like, let's move on. And So I mean, everybody's gonna have their tastes, but I think that's the fine line between too much and not enough, or and that's what I always try to think about. At least is like you can do your stuff, maybe original stuff, or your unique stylings on cover songs, but then you've also got to be able to like reel people back in with something that they're used to or they know and love, you know. So sprinkle what you can, and then hook them back, and then try to sprinkle back what you want, and then so that's at least how I go about like thinking about the performance and how things are always different. It's like if the crowd's engaged in one way, then try to go that route. If they're not, then maybe try to change that up and go a different route. You know?
So on that topic on writing, it was kind of crazy when I did my 2 albums with some buddies in Wichita. It was just a cool experience because I'd never written any music before, and definitely that argument I've had a lot with myself over the last like even 8 whatever years is that idea of, do I want to do, you know, kind of go Floyd style where I'm doing like a concept album, 17-minute songs, screw the public, you know, I'm going to make music for musicians, or, you know, not to just have it be only 2 kinds, but, or go the maybe more pop route and whatever, make it more accessible, etc. Like what's your philosophy when you start writing stuff like that?
I wouldn't even say it's more like polished either. When we're talking like go the more like radio style, it's just more like, so, I mean, you use the like Hendrix analogy where like Chaz Chandler, his manager slash guy that kind of discovered him and brought him over to London, he was very much thinking of the 2.5, 3-minute pop song for the radio at popular music at the time, you know, in 1966, 67. And once Jimmy became Jimmy and the world knew it, and he kind of allowed himself to start swimming off, you know, like they actually kind of had a little tiff because Chaz Chandler was like, man, where's the song? Like this jamming is all good, but where's the song? And that doesn't mean that his music is good either way, because I think both audiences appreciate it. So I think the difference would be there's great music in both of those kind of ideas. It's just the attention to detail and how much attention to detail an artist or a person puts into it. You know, so as much as you make that like Floyd 17-minute song, if you've got 17 minutes of really good attention to detail and you took your time and it was awesome, then people probably love it even if it was 17 minutes, you know? And if you spent 2 minutes on something you thought you were pandering, but there was no attention to detail, then it's just 2 minutes of crap, you know? So I don't think it's any, I mean, again, you don't want to try to go either way, I guess. It's more, for me, it's an idea that you kind of start with that, oh, I really like that. And if I can remember it past when I came up with it and kind of hum it in my head and keep coming back to it in a couple days or a couple hours later, then it's got to be cool enough for me to try to flesh out more of it, you know?
Yeah. Did you guys, how did you record your stuff? Did you like track it all, or did you do it live, or how did you do your albums like that?
So the first record that we did was very much kind of pieced together, different places, different times, and what we did is I did a majority of the kind of like engineering on just basic stuff, basic gear like 57s and a basic like condenser, like one condenser. Anyway, and then we historically, I guess this is what we've done, is like have songs kind of try to track live, try to overdub things after we've tracked live, or if something's already there, we do a lot of stuff to click. So if something's already there with just a basic solo acoustic part, then we can just build from. And so I would say it's kind of any and all ways that we've done things, but historically, once that's all done and kind of not necessarily levels or mixed or anything like that, where at least we think it's a rough estimate of what we want, we'll ship it out to a third party to be mixed, and then probably to another third party to be mastered. And that's just kind of what we've done, and it's always been just people that I've known that have done the mixing and mastering. I mean, not that you're saving much money. But you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like you tend to go to people that you trust, and even if you have no idea what their musical tastes are or whatnot, if you trust that person, then more or less, you know, I don't have too much restraint
Right.
doing something like that. Obviously, I would know them to know their background and stuff like that, but it's fine. Hey, there they are.
We got blowers. That's lovely. Leaf blowers
Conditions
outside.
are always different.
Yeah, I know. So I know when I was doing mine, one thing when I've always played live, like orchestra and all that kind of stuff. Even with our rock band, and then going into the jazz guys. I mean, they would never track, right? I mean, jazz guys just go into the room, and their mentality is on this solo, you get what you get.
Sure.
And that's part of the art form. But it was just interesting going over to a lot of the rock guys, and they're like, okay, one of my buddies, I gave him my one of me and Derek's friends on the album. I gave him the Pro Tools recording, and so he took it home because he had Pro Tools, and he came back, he's like, yeah, it took me 87 takes. I was like, 87, like, you didn't have to spend that much, I mean, yeah, I appreciate it, thanks for getting it right, but I mean, you didn't have to, and so that's kind of the thing, that when I hear an album that is literally completely tracked, they do only drums and they do only guitar, and then that was just their scratch track guitar, right? Then they bring the bass in, and then they take the guitar out and then do the guitar for real, and you mentioned the money. I mean, that's a big thing with all of us. It sucks, but it's like, do we have time to sit here for literally 9 months on this album to sit there for 4 days on just the guitar track by mixing the guitar? I mean, we just don't have that much time, a lot of us, and
well, so here's what I would say about that, though. So I went to a recording school in Phoenix, and then I moved to Los Angeles and lived there for like 3.5 years, and I worked at some studios, and I was basically just like a fly on the wall, not making much money, but just being there was kind of cool. And so in a lot of ways, like, I somewhat trained to like do things like that. So I have my own little Pro Tools rig, and what worked out, like, what you were just describing was basically like everything that we did. So we've done all of the above, where it's like there's times where it was literally like, okay, that's the drum track, and I think each song is different, and there's a lot of versions of songs too, where our second album actually had 3 or 4 different versions of songs that I recorded everything on my own, and like took it to the guys, and I was like, this is what I'm thinking for the song, and so they used that as their reference point before they even played their parts.
Right.
And so sometimes it becomes this thing, so like our first album, it became this thing where it's like almost like checking things off the list. So it's like, okay, so here's this song idea. It's just the acoustic guitar part, but I went through and took the time to track it to a click, so therefore someone else could come listen to the same click, play along with. Theoretically it would line up, which it does. Modern technology. No, I'm just kidding. But no, like any capable musician, that's why kids, they say practice to a click, because not only does it make you better, but if you're able to do that, you can remote record or record anything with anyone. And so we did things that way, and then honestly, our first record, the guitars and the drums were finished when Derek Tucker joined the band. So he came in and basically
all that down already,
just laid down bass parts to some songs that he wasn't even necessarily familiar with at the time. And so that's very cool in one way. And also, like, if you see us now, you would notice quite a bit of change in those songs that we play from that first album. And so again, it's just both ways. It's very cool. If you expected to see the band and hear it just like the record, then you might be a little bit disappointed. But there's also a lot of things. I remember a quote from Billy Corgan. He was like, if you're recording something, and I'm probably paraphrasing, sorry, Billy. If you're recording something, like, why skimp on parts and sound and sonic, like production-wise? You have all of these things available to you, and if that's what you hear and that's what you want in your head, then, like, why not do that? And so, whereas there's things on the record, on both of our records, multiple guitar parts, and I can't recreate that as one guitar player on stage. Right. And so if you come to the show in that regard, you might be disappointed. But if you came to the show kind of knowing the songs, but knowing that they're going to be different, and even a lot of like solos, like guitar solos or bass solos and stuff, they're going to be different on night to night. So if you're looking for that kind of experience, then it's that, you know. And so that's what I was saying earlier, maybe too, about the fine line between something you recognize and something that was exciting and fresh to hear, while still hinting at an original thing that you enjoyed, you know?
Right. I know, like, what you just described was something that always happens to me a lot, is people will call me in for this, like, singer-songwriter kind of guy, or a kind of country duo or something, and they're like, oh, we want violin on the song, and that's what happened on my album, is I put a bunch of violin parts over all of my singing, and then when I went out live, I can't play all the, I gotta sing, you know, and so on my next album, I'm just gonna purposefully choose not to do that. I mean, and I'm gonna make it more, and this is again just my preferences, I'm gonna make a massive violin solo in the middle, but not put all this extra violin crap over my vocals, because I can't do that live. And so I was asking these guys, like, I know it feels neat, you know, to have all this violin on your stuff, and I get it. Yeah, I'd love to have a full string quartet, or bring in all, you know, full horn section, or whatever all these extra parts are, 5 backup singers, etc., you know. But when I go out and play live, that's not what you're gonna get, you know. And so that in that way, it seems silly to me, but it doesn't when you're like, dude, if I could get some extra people and then my album sounds cool. Definitely this happens a lot when you're like a solo player, you know, and then, but you're handing this to a club owner, and then it's got like a 5-piece band, and then, well, what am I getting? You know, that would be my argument against doing stuff like that. But I can totally understand why, like the why not argument, you know, and so I don't know, like, but I've always found recording to just be funny. Like, just the whole thing is just funny to me. Like, going in and you're sitting there and you're like, and then, you know, the other guy's always in this other room, you know, the mixer, and he's, you know, he's got his, you know, his eye rolling, and then you're like, okay, and you always say that, all right, one more time, I got it. And he's like, you know, you know, you always say that one more time, you know, you're like, yeah, right.
Well, I think, though, in that regard, recording is just like driving, though. Everybody drives different. And if you really get down to it, though, if you're around enough drivers, it doesn't seem all that uncommonplace for some people to do one take and be done, and then for other people to be really meticulous. And then maybe that's what I mean as far as attention to detail. Even if it was one take, they might just, you know, they drive differently. So, like, their attention to detail when they're doing something, although it's really fast and they just got from point A to point B, like, they might have driven really good, you know?
Yeah, right.
Or if you're a terrible driver and you drive really, really slow, and it takes you a really long time to get from A to B, you're still there safely. It just took you a lot longer to get there.
That's it.
And so I think, you know, that was what that experience out in Los Angeles was cool to see, is like a lot of people record completely different ways. Some people come in and they seemingly waste a lot of money. Other people, they come in and they're very business-like, you know. Other people come in and they're having a great time, you know, partying. And it's like, are you guys recording? And it's like, maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe they just, you know, they're...
It's just all about the life.
Yeah, maybe, you know, it doesn't matter. So it's all different. And I think it's cool, though, like you were just saying, it's all based on different songs, kind of have different feels, and they get created in different ways. And the act of going through the process of creating a record, though, like you said, for the next one, I'm going to do this, because you learn each time you do something.
Right.
So as you do it, you think like, okay, like I remember how I thought the drum should sound on the last record, but now I'm totally hearing this.
Yeah.
And that's different than what I thought previously. And so, not that anything has necessarily changed, because it's not just a flip of a switch, like you're different now. It's just like over time, your ears change, you get exposed to different music, different ideas, you know, connected in the brain and all that stuff happening. You know, your tastes become different. So like the whole...
Because the song changes, I mean, because like you guys having the guitar and drums there already, then you bring somebody like Derek in there, and then you go, okay, put, you know, funky 4/4-ish something over there, and then he comes in and does whatever he does, and you're like, ooh, you know, and if you give, sometimes like Miles was really well known for that. He'll bring in, I know that you guys are just going to lay something ridiculous down because I've got the best in the world coming to play with me. And then so he tells them about this much and lets them do their thing. And all of a sudden they're like helping create this, even though they're not really the writer of the song. But you know, they come in and put this, you know, that like a bass player, you're imagining like a regular funky part, but over this chorus he starts slapping and you're like, ooh, that sounded really good, you know. And so it like you said, you had this one idea and then it changes, but you don't know that's going to happen. It's just there's no way to prepare for that. And that only works when you bring in like really quality musicians, can help that a lot. You know?
And I would say too, at the same time, those guys would probably be just as quick to say that for every one of those, there's probably another time though where they were looking more for inspiration as far as like, man, what do you want me to play?
Yes.
And then somebody like me who or somebody who like had the original idea was like, man, this is what I was thinking, and then they go with that idea. So again, I would say it's song by song basis, because a lot of times it's like you can't, like you just said, you can't think of something before it happens, right? And you can imagine maybe how you would do it or what you hear in your head, but obviously that's going to come through somebody else's ears differently. And so sometimes it's really cool. Other times, what you had in your head is what you want. And so, you know, there is a little bit of that too, where I've come up with things that I thought were just like scratch vocal parts. And then at the end of the day, like, the record's done, you're, man, like, I like that very first one where I was just goofing around.
Right.
And even some of your inflections and things like that. So there's a slippery slope there, like when you're recording too, of like, man, do I, like you say, do I do a scratch guitar track just so I can get everybody else on board, knowing that I'm going to come back, but then when I come back, is it going to be different? Is my idea going to be different? Maybe the tone is going to be different, and then it's going to change how I was originally thinking about the song. And then even though that one part is messed up right there in that original take, do I just keep it? Do I just keep it or something, you know? Like, I know it was a mistake and I really wanted to redo that, but is that what makes that version or that song cool? There's a lot of little mistakes where, like, I have just tons of music of things that I've tried to record. And a lot of the times it's like the whole, like, throwing paint, you know? Sometimes you come up with really cool stuff, and sometimes you just come up with crap.
Yeah, recording cracks me up. The one other thing that I wanted to ask you was, I'm always kind of fascinated by what people are thinking while they're playing. So I'm specifically talking about, like, on stage, what are some things that is rolling through your head? I'll give you an example for myself. I know that now that I've, you know, been through so many lessons and stuff, there's a lot of kind of rhythm and kind of touch and stuff that's pretty natural at this point. You know, I don't have to think about that as much. So I know for myself, I'm thinking a lot about when am I going to play? Like, when do I need to come in? You have those vocals, and then you have your little space there. I'm going to throw my little silly riff in, and more vocals, and then my space, and like, or on a solo, and I'm going to, I need to start lower, and then I'm going to build my solo. You know, I have these, like, when kind of things, you know. Either as, you can answer this one of two ways, or however you want, like, even as a guitar player or as, like, even a front person on the mic. Like, what's going through your head while you're playing? What are you focusing on?
I don't know that it's unique, but a lot of the times if we don't have a set list, which is, I would say, the majority of our shows, it would be me thinking what the next song is going to be. And that might sound weird, but it's more or less like,
playing is so easy that you're thinking about what's coming next.
No, like, kind of though. I mean, I guess what it would be is like when I am aware of kind of what's happening, depending upon how long the show is, two things I think of are trying to kind of relax, because there are times I feel like personally I get really like into something, and then sometimes I see video of myself and I'm like, I was like, man, I was killing it in my head. And then I see video and I'm like, man, I'm just jumping around. Like, I don't know if that's just my own, like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I was in the moment. I was having a great time, right? So sometimes I try to remind myself to, like, relax a little bit. But then more or less, I'm trying to watch people, and if they're into a specific song, like, I'm thinking, okay, what else can we do that's in this vein? Or if I'm thinking, what's the last two songs we played? So what are the next two songs? So if we just did this type of song, I know the next one is going to be an original. Okay, we just did this type of original. Let's do some covers. Yeah. Oh wait, we just did this type of covers, so now let's do.
I need to give them a ballad, etc.
Yeah. I think it's more or less like the flow of the show, if you will, or the set. Because a lot of times, you know, we'll play like an hour or 75-minute set, so it's like okay, how is the whole thing kind of going to flow? Is there going to be up-tempo numbers, slower numbers, like funkier numbers?
Right.
Even to the point, especially as a trio, I a lot of times think about, okay, like I just did a song where I'm being the guitar player. Like, I'm the guitar player.
Main focus, yeah.
And then there's like, if I just did 2 or 3 of those songs, I need to do a song that's, I'm not the main thing, or I'm not doing that type of guitar playing. So maybe I'm just strumming on a song, and it's less of me playing single lead blues notes, you know? So
more singing, Derek front, or whatever.
Yeah. Or maybe a more rhythmic kind of thing. We have a lot of songs, especially as a trio, that like we do a lot of guitar changes. I have some open tuning guitars, and so those are perfect little drum breaks for a drum to start a song and have it be 16 bars of a drum. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a solo, but it's just them kind of introducing the next song and kind of okay, our ears are now adjusting to something new, not just the same thing over and over and over again. So that's relax, and then the flow and how things can be not all the same is what I'm constantly trying to figure out.
Yeah, I totally can relate to that, because when I tried to run the dudes, we had our little Fish rock band thing. That was the thing that was hard for me, is the song choices and also like the talking to the audience kind of stuff. It was like the violin was, probably arrogant, but kind of on lockdown, and even the singing, I was pretty comfortable doing that, but it was kind of all of the other stuff. It was the mood regulation, it was the, figuring out what song, and definitely I agree with that, and I think a lot of fans don't understand that. Like, all of us practicing so long in a practice room, this is like breathing, they don't know that we're on stage and we're like thinking what we're gonna eat after the show, I mean, like our brain is somewhere else, this is so like mindless. And,
well, and as a student though, I remember thinking, or not thinking, but I guess once you can start doing that, like you're almost doing 2 things at once. You can start thinking while you're playing something. I even tell students that I have now, it's like, try to watch TV, as counterproductive as it seems. Try to practice the guitar and turn on the television on mute. And even though you're still focusing on the guitar, you can kind of let your mind drift a little bit and try to still go through the mechanical part of playing guitar. Because then again, like, what happens if you're playing something and it becomes so routine that your brain thinks of something new to go to after that, or something like that, There's the Pandora's box of like creativity. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, and you're enabling the creativity if they're just noodling. That's a good exercise for that, But that's kind of like, I think there's a lot of, I would hope to put myself in that category too, but those people that have just done it so much that now it's on autopilot, and that's where I think, at least as a player, that you obviously want to eventually get to. 20 years in the road, 10 years into your practice, you'll probably be able to get to some kind of point like that.
The 10,000 hours,
The 10,000 hours thing, that's, I've heard of that.
And even if it's not like a particular thing, a lot of times, or a particular instrument that you put your time into, a lot of times it's like, do you critically listen to music?
Yes.
A lot of younger people nowadays, they don't necessarily listen to music, even the way that our generation did, and our parents, like, they listen to records, and so even to the point of a flow of a show and like song choices and stuff like that, genre wise, even age is kind of something to think about. Is the audience majority of the audience older crowd, or is it a younger generation crowd? That means maybe their attention span is a little bit shorter. Older generation maybe likes this particular style of music better. You know what I mean? So all of those things going into it, and I guess as it comes full circle, when you talk about it like that, though, there's a great, again, I'm misquoting it, but like Thelonious Monk, I believe, is quoted as basically saying, like, the music that I play is basically the life that I'm like living. I'm basically just spitting back out all the things that I eat and breathe and sleep and live in, you know? And so I'm basically just like an expression of my life and what I do, and the influences and the stuff that I've had in my life, both positive and negative a lot of the time. So it's just, I think that's a good way to describe it too, because it's like, everything's always different, always changing, but
I've talked to my buddy too with our country band now, and he was just kind of joking that we do really great with like that 40s or 60s crowd, I mean, and that's fine because we play a ton of 70s stuff and we love it, and some Garth Brooks kind of stuff.
That's what I mean. It's that little niche of the pie,
and it's
that's
great.
Perfect.
Yeah, but he was joking why we don't have any younger people at our shows, and I was like, well, I mean, this is what we do. We're really good at Eagles, Doobie Brothers, that kind, 70s stuff. But I'm like, one thing that we could think about is, you were talking about adjusting the set list. Maybe we need to get rid of this Tennessee Waltz kind of songs. This is like 40s. I mean, my parents are like, yes, I've heard that song. It makes me feel childhood, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, that crap is really boring. I mean, we need to be playing,
each their own. Each their own.
They think it's boring, but I'm like, maybe you're right. We do need to keep a ballad in our set. We can't take out every ballad and make all of our songs rip-roaring, but maybe we need to add in like that Kenny Loggins' Danny song. That's a really famous tune, or like Take It to the Limit, Eagles, right? Maybe we need to put some updated ballads instead of that.
And what you're saying though is basically, it's just like anybody. If you're doing it that long and you have that attention to detail, that you're being that hyper aware of what we're talking about, nerding out on it. It's just like, at that point, then, you're doing it right. Whether it's the 17-minute Floyd or the little short 2-minute package song, like if there's that hyper awareness and attention to detail of what you're doing, and it's done well from the right, from the right heart. I think that probably, at least in my opinion, is the type of fan or audience member that I would love to have 100% of the time.
Right.
So if you're getting close to that with anybody, then you've won. As far as that being said, that's as far as the like live music entertainer thing. You know what I mean? Because you could also go from, you're that live music entertainer person, and the opposite side of that would be like you're a proficient recording artist. You know what I mean? And those are two different worlds.
Yeah,
so.
sure.
That you're not worried about the order of the songs and
Right.
if the crowd loves it or not. It's not.
Yeah.
There is no audience. It doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah.
It's a different awareness and a different attention to detail.
So to finish up here, tell me some funny moments in the music business you've had, or some ones that you'd never forget, or
Okay, so
whatever you want to say.
I mean, this is not funny, and I wish it was about me, but it's not. I lived in Los Angeles, and I worked at a recording studio. It's the very famous Westlake Recording Studio, right in West Hollywood. And it was the recording studio that Michael Jackson did a lot of his work as a solo artist in the 80s and like early 90s, I guess. So I'm not here in this place until 2009. So 2009. So Michael actually passed away the summer that I moved. So I had just moved to Los Angeles when all this happened. But there was a room upstairs in one of the bigger rooms of the studio. This Westlake has 4 different rooms, and one of the larger rooms has a couple lounges for the artists, to relax while they're not tracking. And there was actually construction done in the early 90s, I believe. I'm probably wrong on some of these dates, but construction done for an upstairs like lounge area to have a looking window so you could see into the studio. And like my second or third day on the job, a guy was like, yeah, so when Michael was recording here, he had this room renovated and had this little window put in so his pet monkey could look through the window while he recorded. And so, not that that's a good story at all.
That's crazy. I mean, that's
and that room was just that little lounge thing. I don't think anybody ever really used it. It was just kind of like a little upstairs kind of thing with a TV and a couple couches in there, but it was always just spick and span. Like nobody had ever touched that room. I wonder if any of the artists even knew it was there.
They were there in the 70s. It was used.
It was used by the monkeys.
By the monkeys.
I don't know. Is that a good story?
Dude, I mean, I that does not surprise me. Michael Jackson had a pet monkey. Yeah. That just doesn't surprise me at all.
And the lengths that
Bieber has a pet monkey.
The lengths that seemingly sane people went to accommodate something like that. It's like, well, we don't know if we've got it in the budget, but let's just go ahead and do it.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty funny.
And run with it, so they did.
Oh my gosh. Hey, have you had any like? Did you guys play at the IBC?
We have played the
or what is the thing called?
the International Blues Challenge.
Yeah.
IBC.
Was that kind of a crazy thing to be a part of, or?
The band, the old number fives, we did that 2 different times actually, and first time it was seemingly crazy, but then the second time we went, it was seemingly very enjoyable experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I can say about it all is it definitely puts any band that gets to that spot in Memphis there, it puts you through your paces, just as far as, anything that becomes more of a business, like you have to travel, you have to be on time for things.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's hard to do, but for some musicians, that can be hard to do. Not that there was anything like that with us, but I would just say that we went the first time, maybe with a little bit, like, we're going to be on our best behavior, here we go. And then after that, and we did well both times. We made it to the semifinals, advanced to the semifinals, so that's
cool.
Paring down quite a few bands to very few. But I think personally, the first time we played, we have 3 shows basically down in Memphis on Beale Street there. You're guaranteed 2, so we up to 4 guaranteed.
And they're
2.
like, are they like 20-minute set sort of
Yeah,
things?
it's like I think it's 25 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
And then obviously there's different categories that you're kind of judged on.
Uh-huh.
And so again, it's kind of double-edged because you're riding that line between like, I want to be my own artist and do what I do, versus like, okay, there's criteria. So if you want to go down here and be successful, then maybe you should at least look at that criteria and try to think what you do best, how that fits into what they're judging you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So this is what you're judging me on. How does what we already do fit into that?
Right.
I'm not trying to change what you do.
Right.
How does what we do fit into that Moldfest?
Or maybe
what songs? What 5 songs? Represent
maybe
that
like
best?
if you never think about your like dynamics, for example, and then you go like, oh wow, they're actually going to be judging on that.
And so I think that's maybe a little bit more on the music side. What I'm saying, as far as it puts you through the paces, as far as like, okay, like how do you look? What is the band going to dress like? How are you going to present yourselves as a band?
That's
How
a
are
big
you going
one.
to?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of exposure. There's a lot of cool things down there. But so the first time we went in 2014. We made it to the semifinals, but I felt that our best performance was our very first performance, and kind of not our best personally performance was the last one. And then I feel like when we went again in 2016, I believe, it was the opposite, where I thought we were kind of shaky the first night, but then the third night I thought it was the best situation or the best playing that we could have done all week.
Yeah, wow. And
so I think that in that regard, that's all you could ever ask for.
Oh, yeah.
Thought it sounded good.
Yeah.
I think we did good, and made some contacts along the way, and that's all it's ever about, really.
Did I hear a story, and I don't know if this was, I think it was maybe from Dylan, maybe, and he was talking about that you ran and got somebody a strap or something.
Yeah, that's a great story, actually. So we finished
and you
playing.
couldn't get back in the bar, so you're like...
Yeah, no, okay, so we were playing, and that's what's cool is there's tons of bands, but it's all kind of happening at the same time. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like shotgun start in golf, where there's like, band starts here, 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 and here, and then you might be the third band over here, but you know some people that are the second band over here.
Yeah.
You met somebody the night before that's the last band over here, so you kind of try and pinball around. So it was the last night there of the semifinals, which is Friday night, and we played, and then like right immediately after that, I kind of ran to see Amanda Fish band, and I'm standing there kind of on the side of the stage, and they're just ripping into it, and it's like the second to last song, and there's a guitar solo, and their guitar player, Jake Coivisto, his strap breaks. And, he's a professional, he just keeps going, and it's almost like even more awesome. I didn't know how it could get to that point, because he's up there ripping, and everybody's loving it. And then it happens, and he just keeps going, and Adam Watson looks at me, and he's like, we need a guitar strap. And so I'm like, I have one. But it was at the club we just played at. And I don't really ever wear cowboy boots, but I got cowboy boots on, and there's, like red brick, it's not paved.
Right.
And so I come like, all this energy, And I come out the door and I run down the street. It's maybe like 2-3 blocks, maybe not that far, but maybe like 2 blocks. And I get down there, and like that club that we played at, there's another band, so it's crowded. And I'm trying to find my guitars, and I get my guitars, kiss my wife, run out, run back down Beale Street, get inside right as they're finishing that same song. Give him the guitar strap so they were able to do one more song.
Yeah.
But I just remember being like, whoa. What just happened?
Yeah.
How did I not fall as I was just sprinting? I'm sure it had a couple beers after that too.
But that was cool because you had two different, KC representing KC bands down there playing, and you guys knew that was obviously a really important, kind of moment for.
Yeah, I mean, you would just hope that if you knew somebody,
yeah,
they would be willing to do the same thing, and I'm sure anybody in that group would have done the same thing for me. Had they had a strap somewhere nearby, like at that point, I remember looking at like a gentleman next to me, and I was like, "Do you have a strap?" And he looked at me like, "No, buddy. Like I obviously don't just carry guitar straps." And that's when I was like, "All right, I guess I'm just gonna run down the street and get it."
I don't have one on my bat belt.
Yeah.
Like all you nerd guitar players.
I just remember the panic. I was like, "Do you have one?" And nope. Sorry.
That's funny. He was saying, I think this was, I don't know if it was Dylan or not who was telling me the story, but they were saying that he finally got it on, and then like immediately after he got it on, there was like a guitar solo, and he just went at it. I mean, it just and it was just insane. And
I remember just catching my breath because I was out of breath. And I was like dressed up more than I ever am, and boots and stuff on.
Yeah, that last thing I'll say, I guess, is that's one thing that a lot of people don't worry about is what we're wearing. I mean, we're sitting here worried about our playing and maybe talking to the audience, but we're getting up there like freaking bums, and we don't ever think about stuff like that.
The Beatles, they stopped wearing leather jackets and leather pants and put on those French suits, and then changed the world. So
yeah, man. Well, I don't know. And that's
nobody knows, Rob. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Again, old number fives playing out around town and doing all sorts of cool stuff. A very, very, very good band. You guys should go check them out. And I don't know. There you go. Brock Alexander.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for coming.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. We'll be back next time talking about more music stuff. Whatever we feel like. So
crazy chest hair, medallions, anything.
So there you go. Get out of here. We'll see you later.
Bye.